This episode is part of the pool's Local Officials Stronger Together podcast series. It's one way we serve local officials through integrity, public service, fiscal responsibility, and operational excellence. As always, please direct specific questions about coverage to your risk management advisor.
Welcome to episode 39 of the TML Risk Pool's Stronger Together podcast series. Today, we'll be talking to Jay Baer, a customer experience expert I've seen speak in person a couple of times. Jay's message is so good, I invited him to join me for this episode, and I think it's by far some of the best information we've tried to impart to you over the whole course of this series. So let's jump right in. I'm so excited to be here today with Jay Baer, who is a world-renowned customer experience expert. Welcome, Jay.
Thanks so much, Scott. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. I saw you in person last year at the Association of Government Risk Pools conference and really enjoyed your presentation. And then I know you also did a webinar for the AGRIP Online Pooling Academy called Build a Better Member Experience. I think your be quick, be clear, be kind message is absolute perfection from a customer service standpoint. And I feel like I kind of already intuitively knew that that's the right way to respond to a customer. But I also think maybe some of today's folks need to hear it. You know, they really need to hear that that's the way you should treat the folks that make our livelihood possible. So first, tell me just a little bit about yourself. How did you become a customer experience expert?
I started in marketing some 30 years ago, and over time ran a number of different consulting firms, helping many of the world's largest companies with marketing. And then over time, we started to realize that the real area that you can differentiate between competitors is not necessarily in your marketing, but in your experience. And in fact, Scott, I'd say that the experience you offer is, in fact, your marketing these days. And so we started to spend much more time on the experience side of it, and have written 7 books now about it, and done all kinds of proprietary research, and now have the pleasure of traveling around the world telling companies and organizations how to delight their customers by treating them just a little bit differently.
Well, I've really enjoyed watching you, and I know our members are going to enjoy listening to what you have to say about this stuff today. So we'll talk specifically about the be quick, be clear, be kind mantra that you have for customer service. One thing I wanted to mention first that I think you might mention anyway as we speak, but it just blew me away. And it was when I heard you say that a customer who has a problem, who is taken care of well, will be much more loyal than a customer who never had a problem at all.
Yeah, and that's actually not my research, but it's research that's been conducted many times over decades by academics and other organizations. It's a really fascinating psychological principle that if you have an issue and it gets solved successfully, then you actually give that organization bonus points, so extra credit. And indeed, those individuals will buy more and be more loyal to people who never had a problem at all, which, you know, because I'm a business guy and somewhat Machiavellian, makes me think, well, what problem can I create that I know I can solve?
Right. Well, I tell you, it's certainly for sure. I know it in my personal life. You know, there's so many companies that I deal with that don't have a good customer service experience. And when you get one, it just blows you away. So that's really neat.
Well, that's the state of things, right? I mean, one of the reasons why my principles work so well now is that most people expect to be treated poorly, and they've learned that the hard way, right? It's not as if every interaction we have with a risk pool or a bakery or anything else in the world, it's not like we go into that thinking it's going to be great. We go into it with great trepidation. We assume it's going to be a hassle. So if you can just give them a haven, the impact of that today is greater perhaps than it's ever been, because expectations are in fact so low.
I totally agree. Well, let's talk specifically about be quick, be clear, and be kind. Again, which I think is so simple, but yet so important. So tell me a little bit about each of those. Let's just start with be quick. What does that mean?
It turns out, and I've done a bunch of research on this for my most recent book, which is called The Time to Win. It turns out that we care about time more than ever. We just all do. I mean, part of it's the pandemic, part of it's the state of change, part of it's technology. We just value our time more than ever. So the way I like to say it is, if you give your customers time, they'll give you money. If you cost your customers time, it will cost you money. And so there's a very specific relationship between responsiveness and revenue. So that's how fast you pick up the phone. It's how fast you answer email. It's how fast can you get a question answered? How fast can you get an invoice? Whatever the different nodes are on your journey with your customers or your stakeholders, the faster you can execute on those, the better off you'll be.
And you know what I thought was awesome about that is that you practice what you preach, because I reached out to ask you to do this, and I was so excited, like I said, that you agreed to do it. But every communication that we had, every quick interaction was quick, and I was really impressed that you quickly responded to little old me, I thought. So
thank you. Well, I guess it would be a little bit disheartening if, in fact, I wasn't following my own advice.
Okay, so we know you have to be quick, but that's not all the story. You need to be clear, right? You can't just answer them and have a wrong answer or have something that they don't understand. So tell me about how being clear matters.
Well, okay, so people hate to wait. We just talked about that. The thing they hate second most is to be underinformed. And this is because we live in an era now where we are typically full of information, right? We're carrying a supercomputer in our pocket. We can ask ChatGPT. It's pretty rare that we don't know. And so when we get into situations where we don't know, where we're at an information asymmetry, an information deficit, it causes anxiety, Scott, in ways that it didn't used to. So one of the best things you can do in any organization is to understand all the points at which your customer, your stakeholder, whoever you're working with, might be less informed than you are, and then try to achieve information equilibrium. Try to educate them, and if possible, proactively, so that they always know what's happening across the board, and it brings their anxiety way down, and it brings their satisfaction way up.
Okay, so we have to, when we're talking about ours, we call them members, but dealing with a customer or whoever your stakeholder is, you've got to be quick, you've got to be clear, and give them just the information that they need to get the issue handled. And then, so what's the third component of this triage?
The third is to be the triad, exactly. The third is to be kind, which is also one that maybe I wouldn't have talked about a while back, but we are in an era now of empathy deficit. Like, I'm old enough to remember, and other folks maybe as well, that, treating people with kindness and dignity and respect, that used to be the default setting. And somewhere along the way, we lost our way, and it's not the default setting anymore. We don't expect to be treated with kindness and dignity and respect because we don't see it around us. We don't see it in business. We don't see it in government. We don't see it in politics. We don't see it in sports. We just don't see it like we used to. And that makes me kind of sad, actually, Scott. But I'll tell you, as a business strategist, it's a huge opportunity for all members, for all organizations, because, again, the bar of expectations is set so low that if you just treat people with some kindness, if you just use the right language, if you acknowledge them, if you understand that maybe they're having the worst day of their lives, you just got caught in the crossfire. You just caught a stray bullet, right? If you just kind of practice that golden rule, which, as you said, sounds hopelessly simple and basic, but boy, if it was common sense, we'd see it everywhere, and we certainly don't. So leaning into empathy and just raw human kindness can take you very, very far these days.
You're such a good podcast guest. You've got it all squared away so well. And so we've talked about be quick, be clear, and be kind. And again, I think it's just a great message that everybody should just think about it, maybe write it down on a sticky pad and put it on their computer so that they don't forget to do that.
Well, I will say this, Scott, it's not just a handy mnemonic. It is based on real research. So the reality is that the member experience, the customer experience, the client experience is actually comprised of hundreds of different decisions. Lots of things that you do each and every day combined become the quote unquote experience. But what we've done in my research is really drill down and say, okay, of those dozens or hundreds of different decisions, what are the things that actually matter disproportionately? And it turns out that speed and clarity and kindness are the three that people care about the most, which is why those are the three that I recommend.
Okay, that's awesome. So where can I tell people, our listeners, to go to learn more about what you're doing and what your research is? You've got books.
Thanks.
Is there?
I got it all.
Okay.
Got it all.
Tell me what all. Tell us what you got.
If you go to Amazon and just search my name, Jaybaer, you'll see all the books, including the new one, The Time to Win, which is all about speed. And then if you go to my main website, which is jaybaer.com, you'll see information about all the books and podcasts and speaking and blog posts and newsletters and the whole thing. I do have a newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks. It's all about these issues. Each time there's a lesson, a story. There's book reviews in there as well. Some people, not just my mom, say it's their favorite newsletter on the internet. If you go to thebearfacts.com, you can sign up for nothing.
That's great. I actually, after I emailed you, I got put on your email list, and I've gotten 2 of those, and I can attest they are pretty cool. It's pretty good.
Thanks.
Pretty good information.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot.
You bet. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about some action items that our members can do to help implement what you've talked about. Okay, welcome back. I'm here with Jay still, and we're going to talk about action items that you can actually take away from this episode and implement in your daily life. So, Jay, you talked about be quick, be clear, and be kind. That's 3 things. I'm going to throw you for a loop here and say, what would you say are the 2 biggest customer experience takeaways?
Well, I'll give you one that's actually 9. Here's the way we actually implement this in the real world with organizations that I work with. We talked about quick, clear, and kind, those 3 things. So what I want you to think about is in your organization, how can you be 15% more quick, 15% more clear, and 15% more kind in the next 90 days. Okay, so I'm not asking you to overwhelm and overhaul your entire organization. You can't do it, you won't do it. But you can be 15% faster. You can be 15% more clear. You can be 15% more empathetic, and you can do it within 90 days. Here's how. We have this exercise that we call Design Your 9. So what I want you to do is say, okay, if the goal is to be 15% faster in 90 days, I want you to come up with 3 things that you are going to stop, start, or change during those 90 days to get faster. Then come up with 3 things you're going to stop, start, or change to be more clear. 3 things you're going to stop, start, or change to be more kind. So it's 3, 3, 3. Design your 9. If you give yourself those parameters, 15% in 90 days, 3 things in each category you're going to stop, start, or change. Just write those down on a piece of paper, start working on it. You will be shocked at how well that works.
Okay, that's so good. And it's something, like you said, that's attainable. It's not something that's too much to bite off at one time. So that's great stuff. What about one more takeaway for our listeners?
It is incredibly important to understand. Incredibly important. You cannot be outwardly good at member experience unless you are first really good at the experience you offer your own team. Experiences always start from the inside and radiate outwardly. You will not find anywhere on this planet an organization that is great at external experience while offering a terrible internal experience. So your people have to love their experience before they can deliver a great experience to the people that you serve.
My goodness, that is so good, and it's so true. Wow. Jay, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us and to share this information. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely my pleasure, Scott. Thanks so much for having me.
To review written materials associated with the presentation or to ask Scott a question, please visit www.tmlirp.org and click on the Stronger Together podcast link. Please remember that the information in this episode is provided for informational purposes only and doesn't constitute legal advice. We recommend that you review the podcast and the accompanying written materials with your attorney prior to taking action.